some light.
There we go. Yeah, go for it. You're on.
Can anyone see me?
Just barely.
Okay. Maybe,
Better with lights on or with lights off?
I'll probably say lights on.
Yeah. Can't see yourself?
That's what I mean, the audience, you know. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads 157. We'll start off in the spirit of reconciliation. Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and future, and extend all respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. Tonight we have three talks. One's by me, another one's by Ryan Lindsay, which is about getting featured by Apple, and sort of it's kind of his perspective because he's got a bit of experience in that area, which I'm looking forward to. And then Amy's finishing off with an awesome talk about her experience with Swift charts and large data sets. Today we're also giving away 2 tickets to 360 iDev. They've been kind enough to provide 2 tickets to us to give away for their upcoming event in August on the 28th to the 31st. It's in person and online, so if you win, you can attend in person if you're there. I think Daniel Sloan will be there, and he's the one that was kind enough to organise all this for us as well. So thanks heaps for that, Daniel. Code of conduct. This meeting is governed by CocoaHeads Code of Conduct. If you are being harassed, notice that someone else is in an uncomfortable situation, or have any concerns, please get in touch with one of the organisers, or by email, in person, or there's an anonymous form online on our website. You can see more details there. Regarding the housekeeping, this is, for tonight, it's slightly different. Oh, well, it's not past the elevators, it's just toilets are to the right, emergencies exits to the left, just out here, and we are not checking in, I don't think. Name tags, if you've all got name tags on, hey Tubbs. Reds are organisers, and blues are new people, so if you see anyone with a blue sticker, say hi to them and make them feel welcome. For questions, try not to sort of just jump in during a presentation. You can ask questions on Slack and then we can get to them at the end of the presentation, or if we're passing out microphones at a particular point, feel free to ask questions then. It just helps tonight flow better and helps people online feel connected as well. Okay, thanks to our sponsors, our gold sponsors, Itty Bitty Apps, fantastic company, really. And then we've got some silver sponsors as well, DS and Deloitte. Thanks for your support, your continued support with the CocoaHeads community. Next events will be the drinks night on the 26th of July. So be sure to come to that. That happens at is it the last Tuesday of the month or the 4th? Okay, yeah, last Tuesday of each month. So be sure to go to that if you're keen. And then other groups. Sydney CocoaHeads, GDG Melbourne, they're sort of, if you want to explore other interests, and jump up on Meetup. There is Canberra CocoaHeads. Also Canberra CocoaHeads, a shout out to them, so if you're in Canberra. Okay, how to find us. So melbournecocoaheads.com, and jump into Slack, and there's normally always someone there sort of willing to help out and answer questions, and also on Twitter, which is hidden by my face, at Melbourne Coco. These are just some of the channels for tonight. Sort of the Meetup channel is sort of, most of the information will be in there in general, sort of. If you want to help out with organising and sort of get involved, jump in volunteers. And also if you're looking for work, there's sometimes jobs posted in the jobs channel. And also if you want to try your hand at speaking, or if you've got something to share with the community, jump into the speakers channel. So apps we've shipped, there's Jack Chen, is he here tonight? I thought he might have been showing up, no, maybe not. He released this month, it's a shortcut app. It helps control your Mac sort of effortlessly without a mouse, and it's sort of intuitive. There's a little sort of sample up there. But yeah, he originally introduced this to us in 2012, and he's rebuilt the thing from scratch in Swift and Swift UI. And yeah, he's keen to maybe go into sort of details in the architecture one time with us in a future talk. Good on you, Jack. Also, Nindy Gill, he created a Mac utility for installing a firmware and operating systems. It's sort of niche because he's come from a system administration background, but some of the code I went through, it's quite polished in terms of like Swift UI, and it's really impressive. So yeah, it'd be good to hear from him as well. If you've shipped anything lately, let us know, tell us in Slack, and we'll share it with the community. Okay, I'm gonna do my talk now, making a raffle wheel. Is that fine? Okay. I'm like, can we switch it up? Sorry, he's eating. Let's see. Is it going to go full screen? Okay, making a raffle wheel by Pat Brown. Okay, as mentioned, we're giving away 2 tickets to 360 iDev. So as we were talking about how to give it away, we thought it'd be cool if we got to make the raffle wheel sort of while we were here. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. I'll start off by sort of saying, like, what is a one-day build? That's something that I started iOS development about just over 2 years ago, and I sort of put together a bunch of tools and tactics to help me learn. One of those things is a one-day build, and yeah, we'll talk a bit about that, then we'll see how that applies to making a raffle wheel, and then I'll sort of just touch up on some final thoughts about learning and my approach to learning. So what is a one-day build? It originally started because I wanted to sort of simulate what it would be like to be working in the industry. So I thought I'll give myself a project to do for a month and sort of kind of replicate what it would be like working sort of in the industry. And that ended up getting cut down to 7 days because I'm like, all right, well, a month by the time I started, I'll kind of lose interest, or there'll be something that I'll find challenging and get caught up on it. And then I sort of settled in 7 days, and then I saw a thing by the Mythbusters guy, Adam Savage, called One Day Builds. I'm like, oh, 1 day, perfect, even better. So the point of it was to sort of force me to keep sort of iterating and relearning things that I had learned, rather than sort of do sort of the setup stuff and then get caught up on the complicated things. I wanted to force myself to continually do the initial stuff so I remembered it. And I thought, yeah, 1 day was a good opportunity to do that. Anyway, the thing on the side is just a little template I had on my phone originally. And the idea is you should be able to describe what it is you're doing just in a really brief sentence. If it's too big, or if you can't sort of just list a few requirements, then you need to break it down. If you like, originally I wanted to build a word search game, and that was too broad. And then I'm like, all right, well, what I can do is I can build the actual gesture stuff, like how they highlight words. And I'm like, all right, well, the words being highlighted, I don't really need to do that at the start. I can just work out how to draw a line from a dot to a dot. And that was like, I kept trying to make it as simple as possible because I didn't really know how to program this stuff, so I didn't know how to anticipate how long it would take. But yeah, so you describe what it is, capture the requirements, and then you propose a solution. And now you do that without touching any code. So you'll like, without going online and looking at anything, you'll sort of go, all right, I'll use this and this and this is how it will fit together, just roughly. Then you go and you'll code it. And after you're done, you kind of evaluate, all right, well, did I use the tools that I thought I was going to use? Did I learn something new that I didn't know before? Was my assumption about something else incorrect and needs to be refined? But yeah, that helped me retain certain information. I felt anyway. I felt it was a good way to do it for me anyway. All right, let's make a raffle wheel. Now, this is the tough part. First of all, we all know what a raffle wheel is, hopefully. Well, not hopefully, but like I'm showing pictures here. But yeah, I thought, what do we got? Okay, final thoughts. I was just gonna ask, I had a link to a demo of a like online raffle wheel, but we won't go into that. What features do you think I would put down for a raffle wheel? What are the minimum requirements, the must have? Because I could I want to add a list of names, right? I want to do a bunch of stuff.
Spins, I guess.
Spins, he's on the money. But
Something circular,
yep, a wheel, I like it. I'm just gonna bring up my notes. So yeah, so I kind of thought initially when I thought about this, I'm like, all right, well, we can do a list and sort of have like add and remove names, and then or we could also do like a text editor that you can just dump a list of names, because if there's a bunch of people entering the raffle, I thought it'd be challenging to kind of go add, remove sort of multiple things. And I'm like, all right, well, what if people have the same name? And then there's sort of things like, all right, well, they can have a unique name, but then already it's getting a bit too complex, where it's like, all right, well, do I really need to have for tonight anyway, the ability to add or remove names? Or can I just write down the names in code for tonight? And that's all right, cool. I definitely need a wheel that spins. I know that much. And yeah, it's kind of the two things that I kind of think is something that visually looks like a wheel, and the ability for me on demand to sort of interactively spin it. So that's kind of where we're at with that. This is one I prepared earlier. Now this is just an empty project. I used to call my things one day build with the date and then just a name, because sometimes when I was building, if I got to the end of the day and didn't finish it, I might continue that the next day, but I'd have to start from scratch. And it sort of meant things that took me a bunch of time, I kind of had to cut them out because they were taking me too long. So I wanted to get to the fun bit that I hadn't got to yet. So I just start raffle wheel 2, raffle wheel 3 with a different date, and at least they were in order. Anyway, so roughly what I'm thinking, circle, that's a must. Then button, spin. I wonder if you guys can see that, right? The text is big enough. We don't know what we're going to do there yet. Hey, failed. Fingers crossed previews. All right, starting to come together. Now, what I'll do is I want a list of names, which, see, this could be a bit more complex, but for today, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and then I'm going to add state here, and this is for the rotation. I know I'm going to need that, so I'm just going to add that. So before I jump in, and because I know I need to make these wedges, I still want to test this rotation things, because I could probably do that while I'm here, just to see. I'm going to fill this with a gradient of just black and white, so we can at least see some change. Cool. Oh, wait. It says the system will time out in 2 minutes, Spock. If you don't see me in 2 minutes, sorry. All right. Spin wheel. Okay. I feel like I wanted this to be more collaborative, but I'm doing it all from memory, so I apologize. I just want to get this first base set up, and then, all right, so how many times do we want it to spin? 4 or 5, 6 at least?
Yeah, plus some random. Yeah.
Plus 8, that's it. 5 spins. Rotation. Now, I don't know if the randomness generator here is sufficient, but I think in this case it will be all right. So what I intend to do is, with an animation, I feel like ease out's the way to go. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds?
Build the suspense. 10 seconds.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Testing, you probably want to lower because I don't think you want
Well,
many iterations on that.
yeah, just the seconds. 3, and then we just go rotation plus equal 5 spins plus random rotation. Okay, let's see if, oh, I'm forgetting something. Spin wheel and rotation, rotation. Okay. We got something. We got something. Okay. One thing I want to add up. Did it close? Okay. Can they hear me online? Well, I'll visually describe what I'm doing. I'm putting an image, which hopefully is called arrow triangle down fill. Arrow triangle down fill. Yes, cool. I just want a little arrow up there to point to the name when they appear. All right, now I want to work on this wedge thing, which while researching for this presentation, I found out was called a sector, which I didn't really know before. So, and then we're going to make this a shape. And func path in. All right. And sometimes I like to, okay, no, I want a start angle and a end angle. I'm glad I haven't spelled angel instead of angle tonight. Okay. And just for the preview, I like to maybe do this. Okay. If none of this is making sense, just tell me and I can explain it. But it's sector, start angle, and then degrees 45. All right, that's not really going to show much yet, but preview paused. Okay, now we want to add that wedge thing on top of that. First thing we need is a center point. So this is kind of how the circle will work anyway as a shape. So CG point. And then I suppose, yeah, so the shapes pass, like take a rectangle, which is essentially the size of the view that the shape's being drawn on. So what we want is the middle of that view. Oh, they added that? No, I don't think it's added. But lodge some feedback, you know. Normally I make an extension always, so it could be a new thing though. We'll let radius equal, and now we need, depending on the size, we want the small, just like that circle there, we want the smallest dimension, so either the width or height. So min, rect width, rect height, and we divide it by 2. And that's going to be important when we draw this arc for our path to center, path, add arc, center, radius, start angle, and false, I believe. Yay! And then we also want to close the subpath, or else if you stroke it, that's an odd sentence. If you stroke the path, it will only, like it will only do the top thing and the side. It won't do both edges. Anyway, cool. I think that's our wedge done. I'll just test it to make sure it works as expected. Yes, cool. All right. Now, we sort of need to now make a bunch of those wedges, which we'll call this the raffle wheel, I guess. Raffle wheel. Okay, so this needs the names. What else does it need? Does it need anything else? Okay, I might take the names from here. Does it need anything else? I don't know. Oh, no, colors. Let's add some colors. Do we want a lot of colors at the start or for testing? I'm just going to throw random ones in. If someone's got a color they want to see, yell it out now. Green, blue, purple, yellow. Yellow, orange, purple. That's probably enough. Okay. Yes. Thank you, buddy. I was wondering why it wasn't giving me colors. Okay, so what do I want? I need a for each something on a Z stack. Okay, now this is, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm going to go names indices, with which it's generally, I guess, encouraged to use identified objects. I don't think it matters in this case, but yeah, I'm going to go index. Sometimes if you're mutating state and you're accessing the value like this, it can cause problems with animation that will try to look for a value that's no longer there. So just a fair warning doing this. All right, so arrays are indexed from 0 with, starting at 0. So we can dig into the names using that index and also calculate which wedge it is based on the index. So each are going to have a base angle, which is going to be angle degrees 1 divided by, so I need to know how many names there are going to be, -1, or maybe -1, we'll find out. CG float names.count. So if I have one name and one, no, it would be just the count. So it would be the count. And then times by 360. So yeah, if we have 4 names, 1 divided by 4 is going to be 2.5, and then that's a quarter of 360. So we know that that's going to be the size of each wedge. Now to know the wedge angle, we can do the base angle times by the index, which needs to be float. Okay, that's some stuff, and now we'll get the color. Equals index large times count. Okay, this means that if there's lots of names, it will just cycle. Once it gets to however many colors there are, it will cycle back to 0 and pick the right color. Now we'll just try with a start angle of 0 and then the base angle and see what happens. And then maybe fill with wedge color. Okay, that's okay. We've got a quarter of the circle there. Oh, thanks. So it's all right. Now I need to sort of rotate each one by their wedge angle. Come on, cool, we're starting to see something. Now, the way angles will work is sort of the 0 degrees starts at that right sort of direction. If I want to just say overlay text, I could probably align it to that right side, which is the trailing side, and then add the name, which is going to be names index, and give it some padding. Maybe, cool. Now, I sort of still want to rotate that text a little bit more. So what I could probably do is, I know how much each wedge is, so I could first rotate each wedge backwards by half of the sort of amount. Cool. And then now I've got like the text on the right padded a little bit, and hopefully if we move into this section here, we might be able to replace that circle, which I'll get rid of that stuff. I'll comment that out, and we'll try throw a raffle thing in there. Raffle wheel names Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, it's kind of there, but there's something a little weird with the, oh, I need to give it the rotation. Cool. Yay. All right, did it land on the thing? It didn't look, it's kind of a, we've got to add more names, I think. Now, does anyone know why this arrow's up here and the button's down there right now? Because it doesn't look like that with a circle. Or does anyone know how I can fix that? One way to fix it is to, well, one way I used to do, because if I go into here, I want this raffle wheel to be like a circle, and I can go aspect ratio 1 fit. Now, if I go back to here, that works. But since iOS 16, I can get rid of that, because the issue is that the shape here doesn't work exactly like a circle, because if we stroke the border here, red width 5, border blue, okay, we can see that the shape actually takes up more space than we want it to. Now I can fix it in the raffle wheel view, but really I'd like to be able to fix it here. Now shapes now have size that fits proposal, which works with the new layout system in iOS 16. So we can go and get the diameter of the proposed size, width, which is optional, so we give it infinity as an alternative, proposal height, cool, and then we just return size. Come on, blue line. Come on, blue line. Yeah, cool. So now the shape is doing what we want it to do. That's gone. We'll get rid of that. And yay. Okay, cool. So that is how to build a raffle wheel, sort of. But yeah, so I'm going to go back to my presentation. I don't want to add any more features because that's outside of the scope of this discussion. But there's a lot of cool stuff. Like when I was really doing it, I started with a drag gesture and everything. Thought it'd be fun to do that, but realized it probably would be a bit challenging while doing a presentation. But yeah, so the point of all this is that for me, it helped to have a concrete thing to work on. And sometimes it could start as something small rather than this big idea, which normally always get me caught up on doing something. And that's a method that worked for me, but it's about finding what works for you. And also do repeat yourself. Like I found it very useful to actually do the same thing over and over again. Like even if it was a bit boring, like in that sense, like, oh, you got to go through this setup. I wanted to get like second nature, which is like, I can just go through and set up, get to a point, and then as soon as I got to that challenging point, I would kind of be limited to how long I could spend on that challenging part of it. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I have. Sort of have fun. That's the main thing, I guess. That's me done. Thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
I didn't prepare for that.
I hope you prepared for questions.
Mm.
No questions in here?
One thing, actually, to enter the draw, go on Meetup and put your name in. Or if raise of hands, who wants to win the tickets tonight as well? All right, Michael. Yep, cool. I'll have to just before we do the draw, I need to add your name to that.
I'll be in red.
Okay, that works. Okay.
It's probably not a short answer to this, but like what, was at least part of the source of this philosophy you've got for, I know you mentioned the
As in the one-day build thing.
Well, and more of that, of, of the like getting rid of unnecessary features and stuff. Like, was there something that inspired that?
I think it was.
Way of thinking about.
It's sort of a combination. Like, oh, okay. It was what was the source, I guess, or what inspired that, I guess, methodology or philosophy of learning and sort of cutting sort of back features and sort of simplifying stuff. I think was that kind of it. Yeah. A lot of it was like, because I did work as a system administrator and sort of solution architect before in agile environments, and then I kind of got involved in projects that were a lot of startups that would always come with an idea, and so I started to put together like a blueprint of how to take an idea to a product, and I kind of had like a very sort of structured thing. It was easy for me to do for other people, but whenever it came to myself, I would always get caught up in something that I found fun and interesting, or that I would extend the scope a lot. And I just got frustrated with myself with doing that. And it was just sort of a natural progression where I'm like, right, what do I need to do for myself to actually learn and make progress, which resulted in me just being more disciplined with, these choices, or building a structure that actually helped me make better decisions. And which is the same thing, like the whole repeating. The reason it was good for one day is because the next day I'd be thinking, all right, I want to get back up to where I was, and I would just make sure I knew what to do before that. So it was just trial and error. It evolved over time. Thanks. Cool. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Do you want to flip over? Thank you. We got Ryan coming up, Ryan Lindsay. For,
Now.
Cool. And just tap the arrows, all good?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, cool. Hey, everyone. Sweet. So in this talk, I'm just kind of going to go through and I said about getting Apple's attention. So for the last 3-4 years, I've worked on like 3 different consumer iOS apps. One was for a tech startup in the UK, used by lots of people. Another one was a side project, which then became like a full-time project. And then the last one, like my family have used, and that's it. But the other 2 before that one, lucky enough to either get featured by Apple as App of the Day or in the App Store in like the Hot Right Now section, new and noteworthy. And this has actually been like very valuable to me over that period of time. So valuable, so that my side project became a full-time project off the back of this. And yeah, so over the last couple of years, I've learned a few things from that, and just hopefully share any of the things that I wish I knew in the beginning in terms of that. And so when I said about getting Apple's attention here, this is more just primarily the benefits of that through the App Store, because you've got the Today's tab, you've got all the other bits throughout there, There's lots of other ways that's useful, but that's my experience so far. So I'll go through 4 things. So why Apple wants to know about your app in the first place. So this isn't just all about you. Like Apple genuinely want to know about everyone's apps. So I'll kind of go through like what their motivation is behind that and kind of how you can take advantage of that, or how I did. The benefits for you, they might seem obvious, but just kind of, and how that differs depending off it, whether it's for your side project or whether it's for a startup that your company that you work for, because they actually differ quite a lot. And then third of all, how do you actually get noticed? So if you decide you want to go down that route and it's useful to you, then kind of how you go about that. That's actually way easier than I thought it was. And then lastly, the process of actually going through that and what it looks like from start to finish. So Apple's motivation. So as I said, primarily the main motivation that you have is through the App Store. And what they want to do is they have a whole App Store in every country pretty much in the world, which they curate every single day, hence the Today tab. And there's like 20 chances to pretty much get featured in there. So you've got the App of the Day, you've got Game of the Day, and then they have like, as you see on the screen there, like top games right now, and they'll have like a list of like 10 different apps in there. And these are a mix of stories or a mix of just new and noteworthy apps that are out. So they have that. They do that every single day of the year. They have the apps page, which then is like new and noteworthy or hot right now. And then they have that per category. And so they do a lot of work to try and feature new and great content throughout the App Store. And we were lucky enough. So when I was at the startup, we actually got to talk to the App Store team in the UK. And they pretty much kind of gave us some inside tips, just some information that kind of like helped us kind of get a bit more notice. So some of the things that I'll talk about in here is some of the things they directly told us about. So nothing too surprising. On top of that, on top of just promoting you, obviously they do presentations throughout the year. They want to show off all the great developers in the App Store, because then developers will create more apps, which means better consumers, happier consumers, which obviously sells more iPhones, which is happy Apple. So they really want to be pushing people to build apps for their platform. So that's another one. And then lastly, obviously with WWDC, they spend a lot of time throughout the year just pushing out all these new APIs, all these new features. And so when I say again, Apple's attention, it's more like they want to kind of like bump their own chest, and they kind of want to show everyone how much of a good job they are doing equally. And so, we're gone again? We're back again. All right, I'll move the mouse. So they want to bump their chest as much as yours, so they actually want to show off everyone that's trying to use all their latest and greatest features, which is pretty timely right now with iOS 16 coming out. So they really want to show off all the apps that are taking advantage of like all the new features like Widget Kit and everything they're just about to bring out. So that's their main motivation. And then so your motivation, and I'll talk about this from 2 points of view. So one is solo developer. This is at the bottom there, that's the installs per day that I had, and then you can guess which day you got featured on the Today tab, because you're getting like 20 installs a day beforehand, 20, 30 installs a day. Got featured as app of the day, got 1,500 for that day. That was a good day. And then it kind of dropped back down, and then after that it was about 50 installs a day, and then it kind of sustained itself there for a few months. So clearly as a solo developer, it's a no-brainer what the benefits are there. And then so the App Store optimization, so we started ranking better for all the key terms, and then that was obviously super useful going forward. And off the back of this, I then quit my job to work on it full time, so that felt good from my point of view. So very clear from a solo developer. This is the startup that I worked for, and you can't quite see on there, but the chart does not move. It's kind of just up and down. You will not see the spike of which day we got featured. And so if we spent a lot, and it took a lot more time to get featured for the startup, because you've got marketing team, you've got design team that want to get involved and part of the whole process. whereas the solo one, it's just me. So there's actually a lot more sunken cost. And so the actual benefits of the startup, the company you might work for, typically, obviously you'll get some installs, which is great. Maybe that's worth like $2,000-3,000, maybe $5,000, depending on your cost per install. But the actual biggest benefit we got was hiring, because we was actually going for a hiring push at the time, and we actually saw more applications off the back of this, which is great. I'm not hundreds, but at least doubled the amount of applications we were getting. And then employee satisfaction, like the team actually genuinely worked really hard to get this across the line. That included design and engineering as well, or product, I guess. So yeah, two different benefits there, because if we really pushed the installs at the startup and we wanted to get this done, because it was a 6-week process, not full time, but just part of it. So if we really pushed this at the startup that we were all just going to do it off the back of installs, like, yeah, the company wouldn't have been happy, but they were really happy off the back of the employee, people applying for the jobs. So just something to keep in mind. And so then kind of going on to how the hell do you get Apple to notice your app, whether this is your side project, whether it's the company, how do you get noticed in the first place? This is what I really wish I knew in the beginning. So what we thought happened was there was this magical moment that kind of, if we just built this great app, and then Apple would kind of just one day just sift through the 3 million apps on the App Store and just be like, your app is so good, we're going to feature you now. So after 6 months, we realized that didn't happen. And we found out they actually have a page on their website. It's literally a page called How to Get Featured by Apple. And they have a form that you just submit. So you just hit that Contact Us button on there, and there's a form you fill out, and they tell you what they want to know. You tell them about your app, you give them the story, and then they decide to feature you off the back of that. So that was one thing I really wish I knew, because pretty much every app in the App Store is getting featured from the back of this. It's not Apple scouring 3 million apps on the App Store. It's good to know. So the process overview, kind of how this goes, so how it went. So there was a pre-planning process. So obviously, what are you trying to do? Like, what's your objective of this? Why? And when do you want to do it? So this whole process, you should kind of think of it more like a PR launch or something along those lines. So timing really matters throughout the year. If you're a football app, it's probably good time to go for it at the start of football season or through that time. When football season isn't on, Apple probably aren't going to feature your app. And you'll see this a lot if you just scroll through the App Store today. You'll see it. It's very much like a news article. So get the timing right off the back of that. Know why you want to do it. There's different ways you can submit the form depending on what you're going for. And then when it comes to the form submission, they say on their website they need to know at least 3 weeks beforehand. So if you're going for a version release and you want to tell them about all the new great features you're launching, they need at least 3 weeks, because they've already got things in the pipeline that they're going to be featuring, and they need to get everything in a row to do this. So yeah, make sure you're at least 3-6 weeks ahead of schedule. And then depending on the complexity, it might just be a form that you're submitting with some notes, but you might actually be building a whole feature behind it, which for a larger company will take a lot more pre-planning. And then, so keep 3 to 6 weeks ahead before you do it. Make sure your app is in a good state when you submit the form as well, because this isn't like some mystical process. It's, at least in the UK, it's a group of like 5 people, and you submit that form, they wake up in the morning, they get an email through on their phone or on their laptop, they look at the email, they read the form, and then they turn around to Steve and they said, Steve, did you read that? I like that. It's a very human process. And so they talk about it amongst themselves. So when you submit the form, if they like what they see, they'll probably download the app and have a play with it as well. So make sure you have something good there, and make sure you articulate well what it is that's coming up if it is a future update that they're about to see. And then once you've submitted the form, everything's all good, you've done your update, then it's kind of like a waiting game, which is the most saddest bit, because they don't actually tell you anything. Like, you just send it and it goes into the abyss, and you will hear nothing. So yeah, but if you do hear, it'll be within a month's time typically from that. But you can keep submitting these all the time. It's not like a one and done thing. You can do this over and over again. And so going into the process, so going into the form, there's these 4 main sections that you can submit it based on, which are pretty self-explanatory from the names. Obviously, the new launch that's coming up is just a one and done kind of thing. But the thing where you can submit on a very regular basis is on the version highlights. And Apple have said previously that they're not worried about you submitting all the time. So if you push an app every week or 2, you can still submit this form again every week or 2. A lot of the questions will be quite repetitive. And obviously you don't want to be like, oh, we changed this color of this button, it's wonderful. But like if it's genuinely something useful and you're shipping quite regularly, filling this out every couple of weeks is fine. And then the most popular one that you see throughout the App Store is the story ideas. Headspace, like the big companies are really good at this because it's normally like PR related kind of stories. So Headspace, you'll see a lot in there. Apple feature the same apps over and over again as well. You've probably seen that. It's annoying how much they do it. So if you can get their attention, this can happen again. And yeah, so the bigger companies are really good with the flashy headlines. And then for if it's for a side project, obviously you're not going to have juicy material all the time, but just kind of like go deep in the roots of like why you started it. Maybe that could be a really good idea of like what makes your app unique. So they really appreciate unique ideas. Like my app was pretty garbage when it got featured. Like I'm not showing you screenshots for a reason because it was really bad. It's quite embarrassing. It's quite amazing that they actually featured it, but I'm guessing it was more on uniqueness as opposed to execution. Oh, hello. All right, so yeah, kind of just going into the form process a bit. So it's not like an essay that you have to write. They actually put a limit of around 1,000 characters on each section. The describe your app section is probably the most important bit, and you'll see it on the form. And they purposely put on there, tell us what Apple technology that you use. And this is the bit where I say that they want you, earlier, they want you to, you should be using their newest and the greatest APIs, and they want to show themselves off. And so this is the point where you can just kind of like jump on that and just be like, and this is super relevant for iOS 16 coming up, because probably all of September and October, or whenever they launch it, all of those apps getting featured. I 90% guarantee they're all the apps that are just jumping on the back of like all the new widget features or whatever might be coming out. So that's probably the easiest time to try and go for a feature, is probably around the time when you could get earliest on these features. Really, really useful if you're a solo developer because you don't have all the political problems within a company and trying hurdles to go through. So that's probably a really good point if you're a solo person to go for that. Yeah, your story, once again, we touched on that earlier. Version highlights, same again. But it's 1,000 characters, so it's really short. Keep it to the point, and do not be afraid to just submit these over and over again. For example, I submitted my first one probably in May a couple of years ago, and then I heard nothing back, submitted again 2 weeks later, heard nothing back, submitted again a month later, and that was when I finally started to hear back from them. And then for the next 4 months, I got some exposure. So it's, yeah, just keep trying. Other questions they also ask on the form are just really simple ones, like platform, like what platform is it, what languages do you support, what regions do you support. If you're all the way around the world and you're localized around that, that's a huge bonus, because mine's just UK, so I can only get featured pretty much in like the UK App Store. But if you touch on all the other ones, you can get featured on all of them all the way around the world. Yeah, and so that's a really, really useful. I wish I localized my app on that. Yeah, so this point is like really important, I think, from a point of view of Apple want to show off the apps that they think are really good. And what is really good to Apple is very different to what's good to us. Like I say, my app was really terrible in terms of consumer experience, but I just adopted all the things that they kind of wanted me to adopt. I was like, jumped straight on SwiftUI, straight on widgets, and I was just doing that. And that is my guess of why it got featured. And that's the same again with what we did at Cover. That's the startup. We didn't have any success for a long time, but we used quite a lot of interesting technology, but it was all kind of old school. And then we just started to do widgets and kind of like more gamification things, but it actually got us noticed in the end. So do not especially as the new iOS 16 comes out, feel free to jump on that as much as possible. I will be. And so you've been picked. This is good. So this, like I say, happened like a month after, if you ever hear back. And this, you get like an email like this. It's pretty automated. And they don't tell you that you will be featured. They say you may be featured, which is very sad because you're very excited on one hand, and then on the other hand, you really don't want to screw something up. Because I think it was like 2 months after this email was actually sent that something actually happened. And I was so scared to push any release because they do not tell you when you're going to get featured. And they don't tell you if you will get featured. They ask for some certain things. So they asked for some artwork, which I didn't want to screw up on. So I hired a designer to help me. And we spent ages trying to think of this great idea to send through. And about a week was spent on it and they never used it. So they just picked their own thing. And I'm happy with that. But it's, you really don't want to screw it up. But they just kind of leave you in the dark, which is kind of depressing in one way, because you don't want to put out a buggy release and then you find out the next day they feature you and then you're messed up. And I did that. I put a release out around payments and then got featured 2 days later and probably missed out on half the revenue. So that was sad. So key takeaways kind of in general is use the form. If you're trying to go for this, take full advantage of that. Feel free to do it on a regular basis. Adopt all the new APIs. That's really beneficial. Timing matters massively. So treat it like a PR launch. That's very topical. And then submit on a frequent basis. Once a month is fine. Don't think you've got to do it once a year or something. Also be very wary of what the benefits are, because your company might be annoyed if you spend lots of resources on something that's actually not going to pay off for them. And then don't worry about being perfect, because like I said, my app I just really wanted to get featured just so I could tell my mum, basically. And so I just kept submitting it, and then I finally did. So that was a huge benefit. So yeah, that's the talk.
Do you have any questions?
After you get featured, is there like a time to wait, or are you more likely to get featured again if you do get featured?
So it seems like it.
Just repeat the question. You don't know for the online audience.
Okay, so if you get featured once, you're more likely to get featured again in the future. It seems to be the case, yeah, and it's very just say top of mind. So like I say, when I first got, in either case, we were kept getting featured again and again for about 4 months. Then we got comfortable and we're like, oh, they know about us, and we stopped submitting, and then it just kind of died out for 6 months. So yeah, very much keep doing it, and you'll see if you just check the apps on a frequent basis, they feature the same ones over and over again. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, right.
I have more internalization questions, so I don't know if that's
Yeah.
So the internationalization question. So are you across multiple regions or just only English?
So mine, sadly, are not localized, no.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just had a question. If you would submit it, what's the process after they come back to you? Do you just submit a copy or something, or they do the writing themselves?
So it's just one straight form, and it's just a tick box, and you say, I'm in this language, this region, and you just tick the boxes.
So you basically write that copy yourself, and then they use it then in the text that's being featured, or?
Oh, yeah, so they will not use your copy that you submit to them. In the story one, you're trying to do it like that as much as possible, but they'll rewrite it.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Just repeat the question too.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I have a question about, you mentioned that you had to supply artwork through Apple, and that they unfortunately ended up using it. Did it have requirements for what kind of artwork they wanted?
So the question is, on the artwork that you submit, they didn't end up using ours, and are there requirements for what it had to be? So they have, so you can see on their website, on the How to Get Featured by Apple page, they actually tell you kind of their guidelines, and then they have their their basis for it. But the email they send you, they don't send you any extra information. They just kind of tell you it's what you can publicly see at the minute. And then, yeah, so it's kind of like you hope and pray moment. So we spent so much worrying about it, but they obviously have their own aesthetic. So I think, I think put a lot of effort into it. Just keep it on brand very much. But it also depends on what area they're trying to push you in, because the Today tab is one thing. I don't actually know what it's called, but right at the top of on the apps page is different. And if you get featured in other sections like, I don't know, Hot Right Now or New and Noteworthy, they don't actually tell you about that because they don't need artwork. And you just happen to be scrolling the app one day and you actually see you've been put there.
What was like a chance, like what kind of artwork they ended up putting or acting from what you wanted to put?
Was the question, was the content that they ended up saying about my app what I wanted it to be?
Sorry, the artwork that they ended up showing instead of what you supplied to them.
Yeah, so the artwork so the question, what artwork did they end up using? Yeah, so it's just, we were trying to mimic what we were just scrolling through the App Store, and we were just like, okay, they seem to go for this kind of design aesthetic. So we were trying to match that as best as we could, but a lot of the people, I've not got too many good ideas on that. It actually just seems to range quite a lot. Sometimes it's literally just pictures of the people, and sometimes it could be very on brand, and sometimes it can be just completely irrelevant. So yeah, it seems a bit random. Cool.
Well, Ben, thank you very much, Ryan.
Right.
And you're live.
Hey everyone, good to be back. Yep. Don't move.
That's fun. Let's restart that.
I think my machine's cursed.
I think the HDMI cable's dodgy. Give us a second.
Okay.
Tell a joke, Amy.
Tell a joke. What are those things up the top? It's all from My Little Pony, and I've forgotten the names of the different characters, so sorry.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
When in doubt, go for the big cable.
Yep.
Too big. There we go.
Hey, success.
Nope.
Nope.
Sorry.
Roll with it.
I think we have to, yeah.
Okay, we're rolling with it. So, charts. Charts this hugely, immensely wonderful way of representing data in your apps. And if you've been around CocoaHeads in the past, you've probably heard a couple of different variations of me struggling through how I address presenting a lot of data. So now that Apple has come out with their version of a charting framework, I thought it would be worthwhile taking a look at how can I switch out my attempt for what Apple has and sort of see where can I go with what they have provided. Okay, so stepping back into the world of iOS 15, macOS 12 and before, these are pretty much the different parts that you need in order to put together a graph. So you need a Z-stack, you put the Z-stack in a scroll view, you then have a canvas for doing all of your drawing, you use a path to do the drawing in the canvas, and then you have some overlays to position a few elements like bits of text or axes, any sort of call-outs like that. So, doing this approach, what happens? Well, if you're dealing with a lot of data, you're drawing a lot of you're drawing a lot of points very, very close together. So if you're dealing with, say, an iPhone mini, the points of difference are just pretty much, you can't see them, but iOS in your app is still going through the process of drawing all of them at that time. So performance is a huge issue that you need to work with. You also have maintenance. You're maintaining this code. You're having to do updates, bug fixes all by yourself. You may or may not be in a team. Extensibility, again, you are going to be, you need to write all of the changes yourself. If you're wanting to put a different style, a different spin on your charts and your graphs, then this is what you need to do. And you also need to think through reusability as well as usability. So if you're taking a graph in one context, how do you then present it in another? Now, there are a couple of solutions. You can throw out what you've got. You can introduce a third-party framework. You can keep going with what you have because third-party frameworks are their own pile of hurt. Or you can even just abandon the app and go, yeah, fun was had, but not really any of these make sense in the long term. Then along comes Swift Charts. So this is Apple's solution. It is available in iOS 16, macOS 13, latest, well, the upcoming tvOS and watchOS as well. So it is something that Apple has put a lot of effort into. They have made it insanely extensible, and the API is really, really nice. It makes a lot of use of SwiftUI conventions and is just a lot of great fun to be able to interact with. So, story from WWDC is I was over there in San Jose in Cupertino enjoying the sun and the fun times at Apple Park for their Day at Apple Park event. Thanks, Apple. And sitting there with laptop out, having just done the YOLO update everything to the first beta. People that know me know that that's going to happen. So, laptop out, watching State of the Union, they were talking about Swift Charts. I was like, okay, how long is this going to take to get me up and going? It took me about 5 minutes to just throw out all of my old stuff and get a representation going with, with Apple's new framework, which is actually pretty amazing. I like throwing away code. It's the best type of code. So let's take a look at how you can go about building a chart. So we're just going to take a basic chart here. we've got a whole heap of data points, which for the sake of this, I'm not going to go into how you extract them and do all of that. It's just a series of X and Y points between some different ranges. So you throw it all into a chart and you say, hey, present this thing as a line graph, and this is what you come up with. Pretty good for just about 5 or 6 lines of code. Now, can we improve this? Having like 0, 10, 20 and so on the x-axis for your points doesn't really make much benefit. What you want is to actually tell your users what those values mean. In this case, they are distance points in a particular ride being represented, so they're kilometres. How do you then take your data and show it like this? Apple gives us these x-axis and y-axis marks, which you can present. So if you've got a value there, you then go, okay, draw a grid line. You can put a tick there, which is your vertical line going up, and you can also provide an appropriate label for it. So here I'm using helper function that I've defined to sort of take your raw value and apply the unit of measurement to it. If it doesn't actually give us a value we can use, we just say, okay, draw a grid line. Starting to look a little bit better, but I think we can keep improving. So what we're doing now is there's a different initializer for your axis mark, which allows to say, here are the points that we want to display. So using some logic, I'm going, okay, give me a certain number of points. And instead of having a rounding up to a value that appears at the end, we're just going, okay, we don't want to round that last value. We just want to cut it off because this makes our data look a little bit nicer. We can then do the same for our y-axis. So instead of having a raw value there, we then put in the particular unit and show the user what it is representing. As this is a representation of speed based at a point of distance, you've got kilometres per hour and you've got kilometres. Now, that's all good, just to have a wavy line, but we can make it a bit visually nicer. So let's put an area mark underneath it. What the area mark does is it draws that sort of filled in solid bit right there. Again, just provide it with your X and your Y values and say, hey, here's the colour that you want to be drawing it in. In this case, same colour, just with a fair bit of, well, it's not solid. So we've got our graph showing there, which is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Let's keep going. What happens if we want to make this graph interactive? So with Swift charts, we have a function that can be called, which is our chart overlay, and for that we can get our points of interaction. So to do this, we get geometry reader. This is one of the few areas where geometry reader actually makes sense because we need to know the different areas between that the graph is filling as far as your, as far as the size of the graph, that's important. So we'll get to that in a bit, but we grab our geometry reader. Because we're dealing with an overlay, we then look at the entire rectangle that is there. Well, we want to put something over everything. So we use a rectangle, we make it clear, we make sure that the shape of it is a rectangle as well. And then we set up some tap gestures. So we're using a spatial tap gesture, which is new in iOS 16 and macOS 13, which gives us our coordinate point when we do a tap. So here we're going, okay, primarily we're after that tap. When that tap has ended, we want to grab our value. Using our different proxies, we then do our calculations to give us the point on the graph that we are interested in. You've also then got we want to make it a little bit fancier so that when you go along, you can actually drag your finger and it will follow your finger with those points. So we do the tap first, and then it's exclusively before any drag. So here, same calculations, we're just getting the same value and calculating it. How do we then do that with our particular code? Fairly straightforward. So we've got our point here. We get the x position, so the position on the graph relative to everything. Here we use the geometry and the chart proxies to accomplish that. We then use the chart proxy to get our x and y values. Now, because what the chart proxy gives us back may not map directly to our data, we then want to look through our data and go, okay, give me the first point that is greater than here. That tends to work fairly well. And we save it off to some object that we can then use in our UI. In order to draw it, here we know that that can be nil, so we first grab the unwrapped version and we go, okay, just give us a bar mark. So we do that. For the image there, that's the the vertical line you see there. So we provided an X position. Start and end are pretty much the top and bottom of your line, and you've also got the width. So here it is a fairly thin line because we're wanting to call out a particular point. Okay, looks good, but it's really only showing our x value rather than both the x and the y values. We can then improve that by doing a point mark as well, which will give us something that we can interact with at a particular point. So here, x and y values we feed into the point mark, we give it some styling, we say just draw a circle of an appropriate size. Cool, awesome. That is how straightforward and easy it is to get a very nice interactive graph going in Swift charts. Now, as I alluded to before, performance matters. If you've got, say, a ride that has gone on for a couple of hours, maybe upwards of 100 kilometres in distance, lots of elevation gain, usual stuff that cyclists do, and then you're showing on a particular screen, you've got your speed, your elevation, your heart rate, your cadence, and a few other things going on. Well, that's going to make it a performance nightmare. And Apple's stuff, again, as great as it is trying to do the same thing of just drawing all of those different points of interest at the same value. So, like, you've got many hundreds of thousands of data points trying to be shown on potentially very small devices. So how do we then look at solving it? In the true senior engineer response, well, it depends. Now, the reason I say this is all of your data is going to be very specific to the domain at which you're working in. So you have to make trade-offs of what points can I draw, what points can't I draw. So you just need to go and ask yourself, okay, how much of this data do I really need to be showing at this one point in time? So if there's hasn't been a significant change in your values from one point to another, can you just get rid of them? Can you because it's a representation, can you just throw out 4 out of the 5 bits of data? Look at your data, understand your domain, and go, okay, what can I show? Another option is, do I only show one of those graphs for my domain? Does that actually make sense, or do I need to be showing them all at the one time? For my approach, looking at your significant changes is going to give you your best result. So here's what I'm doing. This is some of the calculations that I'm working with for the data sets. So getting a whole heap of very detailed data and going, okay, if I'm looking at, say, distance or looking at time on the x-axis, how much of a difference between those values has actually happened? And does that, do I then need to draw this next point, or can I just throw it away and wait until another significant change has happened? So here, that last of the guard statements is what is showing the difference in the sensitivity. So that is, okay, have I progressed far enough in order to show this next point of data? Okay, so having done all of that, ended up with something that is pretty performant, pretty accurate, gives me a lot of interactivity and a great amount of detail. Throwing it all into the app because you like seeing pretty pictures, this is what I end up with. So here you've got your speed, it's toggleable between your distance and your time, so I can switch those out. Don't need to show both of them, just show the one, allow the user to change between them. It's interactive and all kinds of fun stuff. Awesome. Okay. I am going to give you all eyes a break. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for Amy?
Did you want to switch it off the... Hey.
How does it go when you put something slightly more complex, like dual axes? Like you have the speed on one axis and the elevation on another axis, and have 2 lines across the graphs?
Yeah. Sorry, the question was, how does it go when you are wanting to present a single graph or chart, but have multiple data sets represented? So an example would be you're showing both speed and elevation on the one chart. It's the same approach as you're drawing your line mark and then your area graph. That's 2 separate bits of information being drawn. You can have, say, 2, 3, 4, however many different line marks there you want. You style them differently and you provide different symbol information if that's relevant as well. So yeah, handles it really well. Beautiful abstraction. Have a go. See what you can come up with.
Yeah, the charts look amazing. Is there any downfalls at the minute? Looks like it's a no-brainer, but has there been any shortcomings that you've come across?
Okay, so the question was, have there been any shortcomings, any downsides, any pitfalls to adopting Swift charts? Probably two that I would highlight is one, it would have been amazing if Apple had a magical solution to the performance issue. Yeah, that would have been really nice, but sadly, every bit of performance they ran into, I've also hit. It's very difficult to get around, so you look for other solutions with adjusting your data set to provide a similar representation, but something that is more appropriate for the screen you're displaying it on. The second one is, this is really good for the latest and greatest stuff. Not everyone updates on day zero. So in any usage, you will have to go, do we want to adopt this? How will users that aren't on the latest and greatest experience the app? Yeah, my solution is, make them update. But my usage numbers for this particular app aren't that stellar, so I have that luxury. Not everyone does.
Also, the pie chart. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Hey, don't know how much you've gotten into Swift charts, but in your exploration, does it handle any kind of zoom functionality on charts at all? And if not, you're going to make plans.
So the question was, does it handle any Zoom functionality, and do I have any plans to do that investigation or do the incorporation into my app? Being a Swift UI view, anything is possible. So you could stick it into a scroll view if you wanted some horizontal scrolling in there. When you do your chart overlays and your gestures, if you just put in a drag gesture or something else that'll give you a start and an end, that then gives you points that you can limit your data set to and potentially just only draw that or redraw that as required. So yeah, definitely lots of possibilities. Have I quite gotten to that bit of exploration yet? No. Anything from Slack?
No, lots of discussion for you to follow up with. No questions.
Yep, everyone's trolling. Yep. I've been around long enough. It's pretty much expected.
No problem there at the moment.
Cool.
But thank you very much, and we'll call it there.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Michael in person. And then was there someone else at the back that wanted, what name? Dylan. D-I-L-O-N. Dylan. D-Y-L-A. Dylan? I don't think I can pick the, oh, maybe we can. Michael, you're in as well? Just, I was going to say, I should put commas here. How about we go Fletchy? Oh, like Michael F, that's fine. Everyone's on? Final call. Okay, let me see if we can boot this up. The anticipation's killing me. Hey, where's my iPhone? It hasn't popped up. Oh, come on. Just building, hold on. Okay. I'm gonna hit it, oh, I didn't change it to 10 seconds, but it's all right. I'm gonna hit it a few times. This is for the first ticket. Michael Fletcher, well done, congratulations. And you can't win twice, so if you come up again, we're spinning again. Oh God. We've got to look at the random. And Jake Lynn, who's online. Well done. Okay, awesome. We'll just finish off by thanking the sponsors again, which is Itty Bitty and Dias and Deloitte. Thank you very much for making this happen. And thanks to Rob as well. Great work for pioneering this and championing it. Remember CocoaHeads Drink Night on the 26th of July. Be there. And now we can go to the pub. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Great work. Enjoy.